Hej allesammans! Hello everyone!
Right, so today is, that was really good by the way. So today is part one of the defendant, aka John Hopkins, representatives of Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital. It's part one of their opening statement. There will be two parts. We're gonna keep it, we're not gonna try and break this up by, talking or whatever.
We're trying to be civilized.
Yes, and we're trying not to interrupt the course of all of this, except for maybe a couple of times at most.
Not trying.
Try. However, they are going to talk a bunch of nonsense, I reckon.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so we've got captions on. The speed on this one is going to be 1.25 like the other ones. There is going to be a link to what we're watching here. And there's also going to be a link to a Reddit thread which has got the entirety of the trial for this trial. Who's on what days and things like that.
Yeah.
Which I found helpful. Maybe someone else will find it helpful. But yeah, should we get on with it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Want to remind everybody here that's in the audience that you cannot take pictures. There is a pool photographer that the media has designated. If there's any questions from the members of the media, talk to our public information officer, Donna Rhodes, who has been in and out through the proceedings. But we do have pool camera arrangements for the media. For the members of the general public, under our rules, you're not allowed to take photos while you're here in the courtroom. Any issues we need to address?
Not that plan. No.
Okay. We ready to bring the jury in?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's bring the jury in. I don't know what you're trying to say, Mr. Hunter.
Trying to find out where there are people live.
Yes. Guys, you're censoring? Case amongst yourselves. Okay, members of our jury, I want to confirm while you were away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves, you did no investigation, and you received no information. Is that all correct?
Yes.
That defense, it's your turn.
Good morning, almost afternoon. My name is Howard Hunter, and I have the privilege of representing Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital and the people who staff it and who make it. We're here today to defend this case, and we appreciate the time and energy that you've put into this effort thus far. You're the most important people here. So we appreciate your attention. We appreciate your commitment both to the trial process and to the process of waiting until you've heard all the evidence before you make a decision or begin to formulate a decision. With me today, first of all, let me introduce my team. With me today are my co-counsels, Pat Crowells, Ethan Shapiro, David Hughes. We also have today a representative from Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital, Dr. Anthony Napolitano. See it over there. Dr. Napolitano may, or may not, wind up seeing you as a witness as well. You'll see doctors rotating as corporate representatives during the trial. They've asked to do that for the purpose of being part of the effort to defend the hospital in this matter. The hospital, after all, is not just a big pile of bricks and mortar. It's the doctors and nurses and people and professionals who run it. And so we're here representing them, although I'll be referring to the institution generally, for brevity's sake, as either ACH or All Children's Hospital. I mean, you may hear Johns Hopkins occasionally, but I've been representing them for a long time, long before they were at Johns Hopkins. This is a case that has a number of different facets to it, and the circumstances and facts that I'm about to discuss with you constitute our view of the evidence. You just heard Mr. Anderson tell you their view. I'm about to tell you ours. Judge has told you, and it's absolutely correct, that what you hear from me is not evidence. It's my view of what the evidence will show. This case involves a number of different facts that occurred over about 18 to 24 months. I can't cover all the details in 90 minutes, and if I did, both you and I would have our heads swimming from the evidence. So I'm going to go over some high points. I'm going to discuss some matters that Mr. Anderson touched upon, and I'm going to ask your indulgence as we fill in the blanks over the next several weeks. This sequence of events began on October 7th, 2017. That's where the plaintiff's case against Johns Hopkins began. Before that, you're going to hear a good bit of evidence about what went before. You're going to hear about the development of Maya Kowalski's disease process. You're going to hear about where else she sought care. You're going to hear a lot about the details of that care and a lot about the problems with it. I'm going to cover some of those in just a moment. The point is, for now, that as of October 7th of 2016, Kowalski's had been to Johns Hopkins several times. They had entrusted Maya Kowalski's care to us on several different occasions. And in doing so, they had come up from their home in Venice, past Sarasota Memorial, a number of other hospitals, and sought out care from all children. Presumably, we vindicated their trust in doing that, and they came back to see us on October 7th. We had no reason to wish this family harm, and we still don't. Indeed, there's a tragic outcome in this case in terms of Mrs. Kowalski's suicide, and we regret very much that that happened. The issue here, however, is who's responsible for it. And we're going to go over the facts of that and what the facts don't show in terms of any connection between what was done by all children and that tragic result. Now, as of October 7th, we had the Kowalskis seeking out care at all children's, as I've said. We believe the evidence is going to show you that care was reasonable and necessary and appropriate. And indeed, we're going to suggest to you the evidence I'm about to discuss with you will show that what went before, the treatment that went before, did not necessarily fall into that category, any of those three categories. And that is the reason, one of the big reasons, that we're here today. Now, as of this date, as of the time that Maya Kowalski was discharged from all children's, we believe that in fact she had been set on a path of therapy that has enabled her to resume function, to get out of a wheelchair, to be relatively pain-free, and to be in a situation of participating in her school and in society as she does today. So how did we get there? Well, on October 7th, Maya Kowalski was brought to the emergency room at all children. As you've heard, she had bad stomach pain. She was screaming, crying, thrashing around, cursing at staff, very upset, and presenting a very challenging situation for the staff. She had pain in all her extremities. She had her whole body being said to be hypersensitive to any kind of touch. She was unable to walk. She had legs atrophied from disuse, from being in a wheelchair for months at that point, or maybe over a year. She had dystonia, alleged dystonia, different position of her feet, as you've heard, and she was demanding pain medication in large quantities. Mrs. Kowalski arrived a while later, and you're going to hear that when she arrived, she forbade the doctors and the nurses to touch Maya. The doctors and the nurses wanted to assess her, to examine her, to put on a blood pressure cuff, to put on an O2 sat monitor, to take a temperature, and they wanted to find out why there was all this horrible stomach pain. Was it appendicitis? Was it a torsion of the intestines? Was there something badly wrong that an ultrasound or a flat plate of the abdomen or a CT scan could detect? Those questions were being asked. Mrs. Kowalski insisted that before there be any workup of the child, she wanted ketamine. And not just any amount of ketamine. You're going to hear a lot about ketamine in this trial. Ketamine is indeed an old drug. And it's a drug that is approved by the FDA for use as an anesthetic. It is not approved for use in children, nor is it approved for use in high doses as treatment for CRPS or chronic pain. That's one of the issues here. It's not just ketamine itself, but how it was used and the quantity in which it was used. Because ketamine is an anesthetic, it is an hallucinogen, it can create dependency, it can cause depression of vital signs. If not properly monitored, it can cause serious injury, life-endangering consequences. Mrs. Kowalski on this day was challenging the staff to give her daughter a dose of 1,500 milligrams of ketamine. That is a big dose. That dose you're going to hear is several times, many times, the maximum dose that policies at all children's approved. You're going to hear experts tell you that is many times any kind of safe dose. And you're going to hear the ER doctor who was on duty that day, Dr. Layla Behar Posey, who you'll hear from by deposition because, unfortunately, she's no longer with us, and I mean that in this life. She'll appear by deposition, and in her deposition, you will hear her tell you what she did and why she did it. And you'll hear her tell you, most pertinently, that even if she was so inclined to give that much ketamine in the emergency room, where she didn't have sufficient monitoring availability, she didn't have the capacity for long-term wake-up and intubation. For that period of time, she didn't have the facilities she needed to do that. Even if she was inclined to give it, which she wasn't, she couldn't safely do it in that setting. Now you're going to see that Dr. Behar Posey is not just a newbie out of medical school. You'll hear in her deposition what her qualifications are. You'll hear that she's board certified in pediatrics as well as emergency medicine. She's confronted a lot of patients, difficult patients, patients in extreme pain. And you're going to hear that this patient, as far as she was concerned, had some degree of uniqueness in that she'd never seen anything quite like this. And she'd never heard of these doses of ketamine. What she found out, ultimately, and what developed over the next few days, and actually the next few weeks, is that Maya Kowalski had been given thousands, tens of thousands of milligrams of ketamine over the preceding 9 months. Her doctor, Dr. Hannah, had given her the day before admission 1,250 milligrams of ketamine. And at that time, he's going to testify to you that he told the mother he was no longer comfortable giving that much ketamine, that it was too much for him to give in his outpatient clinic. And he actually sent her to all children's. You're going to hear that over the 9 months preceding this, that he had given her a gradually increasing doses of ketamine, 12, 15, over 20 milligrams per kilogram per hour, which is dozens of times the safe and effective dose that was approved by the hospital and that is talked about by the FDA, and that it's never been written up in the literature. You'll hear Dr. Hannah say, either by deposition or by admission on that witness stand, that this was at or near the highest per capita dosage he had ever given any patient. It wasn't working. So what had happened was that he had maxed out with this ketamine dosage. He had sent her to all children's, and Mrs. Kowalski, despite what he had told her, despite what had happened over the last 9 months, was demanding even more. Dr. Posey heard this story from the mother. She heard how much ketamine the mother said Dr. Hannah was giving. She heard what the mother was demanding. She saw what was going on with this child. She'll tell you what her suspicions were about the child's condition and what was actually causing it. But she called Dr. Hannah's office herself. Now, she learned that he gave 1,250 milligrams. She learned what else had happened the day before. And so she decided that she would attempt to stabilize the child. She'll tell you about literally negotiating with the mother to give a small dose of ketamine and some sedative, to conduct an examination, to admit the child to the pediatric intensive care unit, you'll hear it called the PICU. And the idea that she had at that time was, let's get her in the PICU, let's get her evaluated by pain management, let's see what's really going on here, let's get her stabilized, and then let's see if we can wean her down off all this medication she's been given. So she admitted her to the PICU, and Maya Kowalski was taken up to the PICU floor, and that process, in fact, began after consultations were placed by the PICU staff to have her see anesthesiology, pain management, and psychiatry, as well as to do some more diagnostic studies and blood work. So what was being done here at this point? What was reasonably prudent with what these physicians knew and what they knew it? What was happening was that they had a child being given levels of medication that they had never heard of before, that the literature did not support, that the literature didn't even mention. And so they put her in a safe environment, they attempted to get her stabilized, they called the correct consultations, and they tried to investigate what was going on. We will suggest to you, the evidence will suggest, and the experts will say, that that was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. There's no conspiracy here. It was an effort to safeguard this child and to see that she got appropriate therapy going forward, whatever that happened to be. Now, you'll hear that the admission diagnosis that was recognized at that time by Dr. Behar Posey and ultimately by Dr. Tepa Sanchez was CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome. There were other suspicions, and you'll hear about those too. But for now, I want you to focus on what CRPS allegedly has as its features, according to Dr. Kirkpatrick and what you've just heard from Mr. Anderson. It's lifelong. It's incurable. It can wax and wane. It can return at any time for any reason or no reason at all. It can cause a whole host of symptoms. And according to Dr. Kirkpatrick, who's the one who diagnosed it to begin with, it's incurable, it's always going to recur, it always requires ketamine. Now, if there's any suggestion made that Dr. Kirkpatrick wanted to try alternative therapy first and had some regard for what the previous doctors had done, we're going to invite you to listen to the evidence about that and to look at the evidence about that and see how much was done, how much was actually attempted. We believe the evidence is going to be that that wasn't something that was given a really fair, appropriate trial before ketamine was used. You're going to see, ultimately, Dr. Kirkpatrick, when this child was in the hospital in October and November of 2016, told Mrs. Kowalski that unless Maya Kowalski got more of his ketamine treatments, more of these high doses, that she would die a slow and painful death. Well, thankfully, he was wrong, or has been wrong so far. And we think he will continue to be wrong. At this point, it's well to walk the clock back a little bit. I want to ask you to look at the evidence as you receive it on a comparative basis with these ideas in mind. You're going to hear, and you heard already, some recording from Dr. Kirkpatrick's first visit with Maya Kowalski and her family in September 23rd to be exact, of 2015. I want to focus for a minute on her condition at that time, what the evidence will show that. She was wheelchair bound. Her legs had atrophied. You saw the picture that Mr. Anderson showed you. Her legs and arms were hypersensitive to touch. She had limited use of her arms due to pain. You're going to see more of that. You're going to hear about pain in other parts of her body, alleged dystonia. She wasn't in school. She wasn't functional. She couldn't walk. She couldn't do her own ADLs. She had no normal function at that time. You're going to hear evidence that she came to that point from several admissions, primarily for asthma at all children, but they also concerned a number of admissions at other institutions. Now, Mr. Anderson has mentioned to you what the evidence is going to show about Lurie Children's Hospital, where she was taken by Mr. and Mrs. Kowalski, Tampa General Hospital, Sarasota Memorial Hospital. She had been seen as an outpatient by the first physicians group here in Sarasota, the Sarasota Memorial Group. She had seen some physicians from Lee County. There was over 40 specialists that she had seen before she found her way to Dr. Kirkpatrick's office. And all of those specialists, many of those specialists that weren't concerned primarily with asthma, felt that in her presentation, some of them that were seeing her for asthma, felt that in her presentation there was some psychogenic component of some sort. And there were words like conversion disorder, psychological component. There was even one at that early point who was concerned about Munchausen by proxy. What I'm suggesting to you is all Children's didn't blaze this trail, we just walked it. We found it on our own, but we walked it. So did these other folks, all 40 of them. And actually the number's about 48. The point is that was not an unreasonable thing for Johns Hopkins to ultimately come around to believing and come around to suspecting, because many others had suspected the same thing. The recommendations for treatment of this disease, or the diseases that were suspected before Dr. Kirkpatrick, were physical therapy, psychological and cognitive behavioral therapy, sustained, long-term, intensive. That was back then. That's pretty much the therapy that Dr. Kirkpatrick rejected, because he began the course of ketamine. When Dr. Kirkpatrick saw her on September 23rd, you'll hear him say, I believe. He didn't care what the other doctors said. He didn't care what the records showed. He didn't review the records. He never contacted him. He never talked to him. There was no discussion in which he said, gee, I think it's this. I'm a specialist in this. You're a specialist in pediatrics. Let's reconcile our differences of opinion. Didn't do that. Instead, he diagnosed chronic regional pain syndrome. He's the first one to do it. And he began therapy, ketamine therapy. Now, you heard counsel talk about what the evidence is going to show Dr. Kirkpatrick did. Dr. Kirkpatrick will say in this courtroom or by deposition 1 that he began this child on a 4-day treatment of high-dose ketamine, what he considered to be high dose. You're going to hear, incidentally, that Dr. Hannah's high doses were multiple times what she was given by Dr. Kirkpatrick. He gave her 4 consecutive days of ketamine, and his records say that there was minimal effect. Minimal effect. He used opioids and narcotics to try to control her pain after those treatments. And we believe the evidence will show that as a result of those things, she wound up at All Children's Hospital with stomach pain and horrendous constipation. That was going to happen again and again following large doses of ketamine and other drugs. She was being harmed by these things. But in September and then in October, when Dr. Kirkpatrick treated her with high-dose ketamine, he prescribed more yet. And so she went to Mexico to see Dr. Cantu. I'm glad to hear Dr. Cantu is going to be here. Dr. Cantu, in his deposition, described to us what his regimen of ketamine consisted of down in Monterey. It's a treatment that is not approved in this country. He developed it from a trial in Germany. He'll tell you that. It contemplates giving the patient 7 to up to 9 milligrams per kilogram per hour for several days and keeping them in a coma with intubation for that period of time. He's going to tell you that it's a risky procedure. He's going to tell you that he tells his patients that there is a 50% risk of death from that procedure. Now he's going to say he's never lost anybody, but listen to the cross-examination of Dr. Cantu about the dangers of that treatment, the degree of ketamine that was used, how it was used, and what his expectations of success were. Because those expectations were not realized. And that's a key factor. Because what is going to happen here is that this child was given the same thing over and over and over and over again in increasing quantities, and it didn't work. And the first thing that didn't ultimately work was Dr. Cantu's treatment. She had to go back down to Mexico for a ketamine booster. Dr. Cantu will tell you that that's fairly usual, that happens, and that then he expects them to be pain-free for a number of weeks or months. Listen to what Dr. Cantu tells you about whether he knew anything about what happened after this. Because what happened after this was Maya Kowalski was taken back to this country. She was taken to see Dr. Hannah. Dr. Hannah embarked on a course of ketamine treatment beginning in January of 2016 and extending to the door of all children on October 7th, 2016. 9 months of therapy, 55 treatments, an average of 1 a week or more. 55 treatments of ketamine, multiple times in excess, not just of what the doses recommended by the manufacturers were, not just in excess of those, not just in excess of Johns Hopkins all children's policy, multiple times in excess of what Dr. Kirkpatrick gave, multiple times in excess of what Dr. Cantu gave. You may even hear Dr. Cantu admit that he wouldn't give those doses in the circumstances that Dr. Hannah did. You may hear him say that he never gave them, period. But all those doses of ketamine and all that therapy and all those drugs over that 9 months, over that 13 months, we're going to ask you to look at the evidence and look at what the evidence shows about the result. The evidence shows that as of this October 7th, 2016, once again, Maya Kowalski is wheelchair bound, she's hypersensitive, she's unable to use her arms and legs, she's got chronic extreme complaints of pain, she's got leg atrophy, and said to have this done. And in that year, incidentally, she gained 4 pounds. Now think about that. You're going to hear more about that. Because Dr. Hannah will tell you that he recognized that his patient was malnourished. Over that period of time, over a year, she gained 4 pounds. Now, she also, at All Children's, was on 21 different medications as of October 7th, 2016. 21 different medications. Let's compare for a moment what the evidence shows regarding Maya Kowalski's condition at the time of her first appointment with Dr. Kirkpatrick and the time she's admitted to All Children's a year later. You can see the slide. The evidence will show that she was in essentially the same condition with one addition. In addition to the problem she was having when she saw Dr. Kirkpatrick back in September 2015, in addition, she was malnourished. You'll also hear evidence that during that same period of time, there were 3 occasions, October 7th was the 4th, when she was in the emergency room complaining of extreme stomach pain following doses, high doses of ketamine and other drugs. We suggest to you the evidence will show that she was being harmed by these large doses of medication. The evidence will show you that the doctor's concern about how much she was being given and the frequency with which she was being given it was very well placed and is vindicated by what happened later. Let's take that comparison one step further. We believe the evidence is going to show you that between the time that Maya Kowalski was seen on October 7th in the ACH emergency room and the time she was discharged 3 months later, she had gained 4.5 pounds, which is more than she had gained in net weight gain in the last year before admission. She was still in a wheelchair, but she wasn't complaining of extreme pain constantly. She was comfortable. She was using her arms, and we believe she was improved. There will be evidence you hear from the witness stand about her condition at the time of discharge versus her condition at the time of admission. But perhaps more telling is the condition under which she was discharged. At that time, she went from 21 medications down to 3. And at that time, she began a course of physical therapy and counseling that, by the following school year, had her back in school. That was pretty much the regimen that was recommended for her at All Children's. That was pretty much the regimen that could have been given her earlier and sustained and perhaps saved her a lot of anguish and pain and perhaps this lawsuit. She got her physical therapy. She got counseling. Pain medications were withdrawn. You may very well hear that to this day she's on no pain medication. Now, you heard it suggested by counsel that she couldn't take ketamine. Indeed, when she was discharged, the court of this circuit, not this judge.
Objection.
The basis. What's the legal basis?
Right. So we're gonna end it here. I'm getting annoyed.
Oh yeah.
The fact that they said we may have saved Maya's life.
No.
We didn't fucking save Beata's, so shut the fuck up, you twat.
Also, the things that they said that they were doing for being necessarily
A necessity.
a necessity, which I when the mic was off, I said something. Compared it with someone else that also said exactly the same thing, but he was working in a. Yeah. Should I say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
He was working in Auschwitz and was also had the nickname Dr. Angel.
Mm-hmm.
That he said exactly the same thing, which is kind of.
I think also it's just like I don't think they've realised it. I mean, clearly they haven't, because they still haven't fucking said sorry to Maya and her family of what they did.
No.
But what is getting me is that they are using doctors, specialists, that have seen Maya, that already had a tainted view because Johns Hopkins had already called them. But they had said that it was psychological. So even if Maya were to have said, this is hurting, I feel uncomfortable, what's the level of pain? 10. Like, even if she'd said all that, they wouldn't have wrote it down or given a shit, because it's psychological. She doesn't know how she feels. She's just a child.
Yeah, they would put their things themselves.
So it's just like, and the fact that they said she's not on any pain medication to this day, she's legally she's not allowed.
Yeah.
Johns Hopkins said she's not allowed.
Yeah.
She's not allowed ketamine, I think it is, and other medications. So it's just like, don't use that as a way to prop up your bullshit argument. Like, she's not allowed. It's court ordered. If she has it, her dad could get in massive trouble.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. Also, I made a big mistake. I looked actually up Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital on Facebook. They have a page.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, where they're celebrating how great and wonderful they are. The best hospital in America.
According to who?
To them.
Oh, is it like when police say that they've investigated themselves and found that they did nothing wrong?
Exactly.
Can't be surprised.
Oh yeah. So yeah, no.
Yeah, we're gonna be done with this shit.
I think I need to get a boxing bag in here or something. This thing is, I don't know, but this thing is getting under my skin.
I think it's because where your mother's from is actually closely culture-wise.
Oh yeah,
and family unit-wise is
yeah.
a lot from where your mother is from.
Yeah, the Polish people and the Finnish people, they are very. There are. You got family union, you know. Then you got family union. You have all over the world, but like the thing you see in Polish and Finnish family union is.
When you say family union. What do you mean?
The family
Unit?
unit, how close your mother,
Yeah,
especially your mother, in those locations, he's like the one you don't want to piss off is the mother, because the man, he can be huge and he can be big and all that, but if you want to see quite a fury, those mothers are, yeah.
There's something unmatched
Oh yeah,
from seeing it anyway.
yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like I don't.
Yeah.
They're trying to use the fact like she came in on 21 medications. Okay, what were they then?
Yeah, and
What were all these medications?
yeah, and they had been there, like the ones described them were those themselves as well. Johns Hopkins.
What?
Some
I did not understand a single
Yeah.
word in that sentence.
sorry,
Sorry.
a lot of those medical things was Johns Hopkins themselves. That
Well, yeah, because she'd been there multiple times. So.
yeah,
Why was it this occasion?
yeah,
If she'd, like he said, her parents had entrusted Johns Hopkins on several different occasions. You mean to tell me that within, what, a year she'd been prescribed 21 different fucking drugs? And had been to Johns Hopkins before that? Like, no, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
no,
What he say, and I'm hoping I'm completely wrong. Probably am. But it just doesn't, yeah, that. Those good words I have.
yeah. There are literally no words for this.
There are, but they're not, they're not the nicest.
Oh no, YouTube would have the ban hammer quite hard.
Completely. Right, thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you want to. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the link to this, so full day one of this trial, will be in the description, as well as a Reddit thread of where I looked up on, who's on what days and stuff like that. It'll all be in the description. Thank you for watching, like I've already said, and yeah, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, don't eat yellow snow.
And be careful around seagulls.
Unbeknownst to us, he's a seagull in disguise.
Oh yeah,
He's a humeagle.
yeah.
Human eagle. No, wait. Human... Gull. Human...
Hugel.
Hugo. Hugo. Sounds like hyok hyok. You know,
Yuk,
like...
yuk.
Goofy.
Yeah.
Anyway. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.